Peace, family. You're tuned in to the Diva and the Unk, Mastering Voice and Vision and Leadership. This is actually our first episode. We're pretty excited about that.
I'm Monica Harris, your resident diva in flow, helping you unlock the power and presence of your voice.
And I'm Rael, aka Everybody's Unk, here to build conscious culture, sales that feels like truth.
Yes, and for our very first episode, and for all the episodes that follow, we'll be blending soul and strategy to amplify your leadership.
And help you move life with purpose, clarity, and real alignment.
That's right. Are you ready to start? Ready to turn up that resonance?
Let's get into it.
Yeah, so we have our first episode ever of Diva and the Unk. It is our origin story. So we're going to do a little peppering here and there. We might fix each other's stories every now and again, but that's part of the fun of doing things together. So you want to get started on your origin story?
Oh, my origin story with you, or my origin story?
No, your origin story of why you do what you do, why we're about what we about.
I guess my origin story would probably start with some of my earliest memories about just not feeling right when I was young, about feeling that people just weren't honest, and there was a whole lot going on with me emotionally that I didn't know about, internally, things that I was dealing with. But my origin story probably starts when I was younger and feeling like this place, there was something a little off that I wasn't really happy about. Um, so that went when I felt like people weren't always honest with you, even at a very young age. I felt like that, and so I guess my origin story starts there. And from there, I started as one of three boys. I lost my dad at an early age when I was going into 12 years old. High school athlete, played football, coached. Really one of the pack animals of Elizabeth, New Jersey. Just ran around the streets and had adventures and had fun and things you do in the 70s and 80s when you're Gen X. And got into sales pretty late in life. I coached for 9 years, high school in Pop Warner. I didn't get into sales until my late 20s. Then it was my first opportunity in sales was out of state. My origin story is pretty unique. The story and how we met was my second excursion out of state, and moved to North Carolina, and that's where I met Monica.
That is I. Yeah, so for me, my origin story was a little mixture of Jamaica and Florida. And so I used to go to Jamaica to see our grandparents in the summers. But we grew up primarily in Florida, even though we moved a couple times for that. I can't not remember before then. And yeah, I was a quiet kid. I like to read. I like to be quiet and I like to observe. I loved observing people. And yeah, so first, same thing for me. Like I have a hard time with just listening to how people talk to each other. And for me, it was really about like how much pain people were causing unnecessarily. Like I felt like if people paid a little bit more attention, then they would hurt each other less and things could go way more smoothly. Instead of going into arguments and creating more stagnation, they could talk it out and be truthful and get good results, you know? But I practiced it when I started singing. That's when everything kind of started shifting for me because up until then, the solution was not to speak, not to use my voice, to be quiet so that I didn't cause any pain, right? And then when I started singing, it turned into how am I going to help people with my voice, right? So I had to get it to the point where I couldn't say that there was something wrong about my voice in order to help people, right? So I started learning how to value what made my voice different and work with it, even though it made it harder, even though I felt like I had to work way harder because of my kind of voice and because of just my personality and everything. Ultimately, it became my superpower. So I'm owning it fully as Diva now.
Yeah, I guess my superpower has been doing things with integrity. Um, it's what's made me successful in sales and marketing. Is just, as some people would say, the old fellows would say, I'm 6 o'clock. I'm straight up and down. I'm straight, no chaser. Uh, I just believe information coming to you in the most simplest way it can come. That way you can digest it without um, any perceived misconceptions in the words that are spoken to you. So I've always valued straight talk. And I find that in sales and marketing, straight talk um, with integrity and knowledge of what you're marketing is has always paid dividends for me.
Absolutely. Yes, I've seen that too. So my kind of quick when I met him, I was finishing my master's degree up in Boston, Massachusetts. And so I come down to go visit my sister to see if I wanted to live in North Carolina. So that's where we met. We met in North Carolina. So where we meet? We met
Yeah, you don't.
don't say it. It has a weird version of the story.
Oh, it's not weird.
It's weird.
If the truth is weird, it'll be weird. We met at a gas station. I like to say that she was hanging out by the dumpster, but literally the gas pump she was using was by a dumpster. So it was one of those days, our mornings, the company I worked for, we actually sold steak, chicken, and seafood on the back of a pickup truck. Those guys are commonly called meat men. And I loved it. It was freedom. I had, from that point, up until that point, I had worked in offices or worked on dealership floors and was always tied to the business as a rep. And when I started selling meat on the back of a pickup, there was a freedom in finding your customers as opposed to waiting for them to come to you. And I just enjoyed it. It was amazing, and it was my first time in Carolina, and it also gave me a good opportunity to see the state, to drive around and stuff like that. So when I met her, it was kind of an unusual day. I was paired up with another gentleman who was actually having woman problems, and and it was like a sob story. I have been hearing a sob story for weeks. And so when we pulled up to this gas station, we were going to a base in Goldsboro, North Carolina. And we pull up to get gas and to start our day of sales. We like starting a gas station with loose boxes and, make a couple dollars before we hit on the road. And I saw her get out of the car and start pumping gas. And I have a superpower of just knowing good people. For some reason, I can sort of pick out good people at a glance, especially good women. I don't know what that is, but I can pick a good woman out pretty effectively, only because I have been hurt by the bad ones. So, I know what to look. I know what not to look for in a bad one, which made me understand what to look for with the good one. So when I saw her, I could see her spirit. I can see a good person first and foremost. And so I suggested to the guy I was with, have a conversation with her. She's attractive, had a sundress on. And he went over there, and it was like 2 seconds. I couldn't even tell you the 3 or 4 words that were spoken, but he left immediately. And I said to myself, well, I'll go. And that's when I went and introduced myself. Tried to sell up some meat, actually. Let's make some money.
I don't know if he said anything, this other dude, I don't even remember his name. But the I don't remember hearing anything, honestly. I think he just made it look like he was speaking to me from the perspective there was, because he just went into the office, the store.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, so I'm minding my own business. I'm pumping gas. I'm getting back to Boston to finish my master's degree, and it's a lot because I was like 3 jobs
Jamaican, 3 jobs.
and finishing my master's degree. Wow. So one of the jobs was at a church, and then the other was performing and stuff like that. So I was performing off and
Hospital.
on. The hospital was the other one. And I did have a job for that. But that was
Lots of jobs.
yeah, but so yeah, so it was hectic. It was a hectic life. So I was about my business and your friend comes over.
To say nothing.
The meat man comes over while I'm studying for opera, aka classical music. So first I was just like, let's be open. Even though I'm busy and trying to get back to my junk. Because he was really literally trying to sell me at first.
Yeah, I'm not a no for an answer guy. I don't
I was like,
normally.
no, I'm good. Thanks. I'm going to Boston. I didn't think you needed to know all that. But
It was skill that got that information out. She was just trying to find a way not to pay for it. Like, oh, I'm going to be driving on the road for the next 16 hours. What am I going to do with meat? And so I changed the game and tried to get the phone number, which she was reluctant to give me. And I gave her mine. And like for the rest of the day, I just couldn't stop thinking about her. I couldn't stop, saying, okay, I think I met the person that I'm supposed to meet for the rest of my life. I kind of knew it instinctively in that moment. Um, but it took her about 2 weeks to call me, and about another week before I was driving up to Boston. And you know, but that's kind of our origin story. We'll have a lot more about that, but it's unusual. But prior to me meeting her, 4 years prior, I was living in Boston. So I've always felt that had I stayed in Boston and had she gone to school there, I would have met her eventually because even at that time, my job was working with organizations that use computers, that use screens and stuff like that. So I was in Cambridge all the time talking to schools. Just in case you don't know, there's way more than Harvard in Cambridge. There's like 6 other schools in Cambridge other than Harvard. So it's like really a bustling area for young people and creatives. So if you ever do go to Boston, just realize that it's more than just Harvard in Cambridge.
well, it's a really popular
It's a big
area
city as
because
well.
there's two train stops between MIT and Harvard. And Harvard's Harvard Square. And my school was part of the schools that were in that area of Harvard Square. So I had to get off at the Harvard stop. Harvard was literally across the street when I was going the other direction to go to school at Laundry School of Music. So yeah, it was for me, I did not see it as a good time because I was so inundated with everything I was doing. And like my short interactions with other people in Boston were very hostile and very, like, it did not help. They just increased the anxiety. So I just did not feel it was a good time. So I was ready to get out of there.
Boston's a hostile city. I don't
It's
think people really
hostile and
realize
Daryl
how
loves that junk.
hostile Boston is. A hostile city, man. When
Hostile.
I was there, I worked for an ergonomic office equipment company, but I was also a bouncer.
Yeah, and when I was there, there was the marathon. What do you call it? The
The Boston Marathon.
Boston
You were there for the
Marathon,
bombing.
and there was a bomb. Not to include the one that, like, what was it? Yankees and Red Sox,
Yep.
and there somebody got shot and died, like while they were celebrating. So it's not, if any Bostonites are in here, it's just a, it is what it be.
You're gonna be aggressive anyway. You're just gonna tell it like it is. It's just
It is what it be.
yeah.
Yeah, so, but part of what we want to talk about in how we came together and who we are together and that origin story is like the challenges of being in a relationship and what does that mean for who we are and how we are sharing what we have to offer with the world as well. Because the truth is that when you find your partner, they're not just meant to like make you feel good, right?
Oh
They're also there to challenge you in the ways that you need to be challenged so that you can grow to your full potential. And when you really embrace both sides of that, that's when you have a good relationship. It's when you're fighting one of those that usually the arguments like we had before we got started happen. Like, no, he's here to improve me and what we're doing, right? We have to be able to see that.
I think
Appreciate it.
I think a lot of times what happens is people use sort of, what your kind of your shortcomings are as the measure for a person. Like, if you're quick tempered, and you feel like that's this fire that you've created within yourself, and maybe you need another fiery person. Most people think that way. But opposites, I wouldn't even say it's like opposites attract. I would say there's a part of you that knows what you need to get better at in life and to fulfill your full potential.
Mm,
And I think that part of you that knows that also knows that person that can help you get there. Like, for instance, you know, I guess up until the time I met her, if you didn't really know me, you would probably think I was a bully. Um, Not a violent bully, but like, my way is the way type of bully. And if you had a different way, it was my job to convince you that that's probably not the way. So, I would probably say that most people thought I was a bully, and only because they had weak boundaries. So when I met her, someone who had fully developed boundaries about people in her life, it took me a while to adjust to that, but something you wouldn't even realize is a problem unless you saw the reflection of the way people treated you in that other way. Like, I've had some really crazy conversations with people about me in my youth that were just untrue. Because I was so forceful in my approach to things, um, people really thought that I was fixed
yeah.
in a way of bullying, which is totally untrue.
So for me, it was like the reason why I think to us, at least on the outside, it looked like extreme opposites attracting, is because my chosen version of taking care of business was silence and observation, right? And then I would speak if I had to. I would share my voice when I had to, or was my job, or was what I was working toward, right? And then Daryl had this passion that was for everything. It's not like selective. Like I had passion for music and for doing what I was about, which at the time was finishing school. But like outside of that, I'm like, I don't need a lot of extra stuff going on. For Daryl, it's almost like every idea he has, he's passionate about, which is exhausting in my mind. But like, so it wasn't really opposite. It was opposite of approach, of perspective, of how we thought about getting what was important to us done. And so, but there's so many similarities for each of us. We're both extreme leaders. Like we both like to know, like tell people what we're doing and have people follow. It's just the preferred state. For me, it's because I can control the environment and my boundaries and I can make it happen the way I need it to happen. And for him, he has the whole vision at once and he just wants it the way he sees it. Right. Um, so the challenge for us when working together was number one, and still is, like even starting this, is not butting heads and not closing our minds to somebody else's vision. While like two leaders in the kitchen, two cooks in the kitchen type of feeling. Um, and but
Work the two.
also that I could still get my point across, that I could still focus and get my good point across when it was important to me to do so, demanded by just being in a relationship with him. Otherwise, he would just take over everything, right? And then for me also was in trusting that he had my best interests in mind, which I tested first before I trusted. But at the same time, once I had made that decision, it was about, continuing the trust. And even today, like it worked out better when I just trusted him and the idea he had what he wanted to do.
Yeah, I mean, for both parties, it's trust. I mean, for a long time, especially as like a dude who doesn't want to be considered like a follower, which is a misnomer within itself. Um, but at the time, I just felt like, you know, I like carving my own path. I like things the way that I wanted to manifest through my imagination. Like I've always had like the super active imagination. Um, it's always positive. It's always geared toward the highest level of something. And but I also learned early on that um, if people don't want to just buy into your idea, I really had no problem buying into someone else's idea, someone else's leadership. That's why I say, for leaders, there's no such thing as a singularity, meaning that um, you're not just always going to be the leader. There are things that you can assign or allow other strengths of leadership to lead you. Um, and so I had learned that pretty early, being the middle child, but also from playing sports and understanding, hey, as a freshman, you're not going to walk into high school and be the leader of the team 9 times out of 10. You're going to have to grow into certain things. And I had developed where I knew things had a process and I didn't have a problem with the process. So everything that I go into, I know that there's a beginning stage, there's a middle stage, and then there's the stage of continuing doing the things that make things better. And so I've always had the eye on making things better, no matter how they start.
Right, right. So, and the other part that we think that it's important to bring a conversation about our relationship into reality is kind of how we mirror each other in leadership as the masculine version, feminine version, primarily within that context. And how do they work together to create a bigger thing in the end, right?
Synergy.
It's the synergy, and it's the chemistry that's required to create anything, right? So if you're talking energetically, purely as energy, then you need that on both sides of anything you're creating, right? And part of what makes this work is, or what, I'm sorry, part of what I got out of being in relationship with him, even as becoming a better leader, is learning how to be supported. So there's that dynamic of, in my family, okay, my father wasn't around much. My mom took care of everything. So she was the leader. We followed her because she was the mother, right? And then there was my sister and I. So there's all women in there. We were taught, not just in my family, but in our family overall, like in our family back in Jamaica, to be able to take care of ourselves. It was very much a family where it was like, if you should be able to take care of yourself. And that is really what they expected, and mom kind of reinforced it as, you don't, need to think about a man till you graduate from college so you can take care of yourself, right? That you don't ever depend on a man, because the kind of underlying thing, and maybe she didn't never say it, but because my father wasn't very dependable, as my mind created, you can't depend on a man, right? So I was living in this kind of, I have to do it all myself, kind of work the 4 jobs, even though I could call mom and ask for an extra or whatever, whatever, right? Like, um, not that she would have a ton for me, but she would have had something. I wouldn't have to starve. And there was plenty of times I did starve because I didn't ask, right? And it was just not necessary. I didn't have to go through that kind of pain. So part of what I learned, and we've been together now for, God, going on 18 years, right? 19? 19 years, sorry, I'll be forgetting. And then, So going on 90 years, it's like, how do I receive support? How do I, because sometimes it's like you get the support and you're like, no, I don't want it like that, right? Being somebody who has my own vision. And so you have to learn how to say, like, actually I appreciate what you're doing to support me, and can we do it like this? Right? Like learning how to communicate how I want to be supported, what is truly supportive to me and what is not supportive to me. Right? And it took me years to be able to say that to him because he has such strong energy. And sometimes I would just even forget what I was trying to say when I was talking.
So I don't know if you would call this the masculine way, because I don't know a lot of dudes who do it this way. But yeah, I mean, if you want to do it, we'll do it your way so that we figure out if your way fails. I'm okay with failure.
See what I'm saying?
Only because to be a true leader, and you really have to lead by permission. You cannot lead by position. I can't say I'm the leader just because I'm the husband, or just because I'm the oldest, just because I've been in relationships longer. I can't say that that's what makes me a leader in a relationship. Maybe I get into, and which I did. I got into a relationship with someone who was way more organized, way more structured in the way that she ran life, where I was really just out there slinging it, from the perspective of, um, hey, this is fun, being free, being in a place I'd never been before, which I find absolutely fascinating. Just being in a new place and getting it out of the mud from a new place. For some reason, it just made me go. So when we met, I'm not even going to say when we got together. It was more along the lines of when we met. We had to build trust over the phone, which isn't easy to do, especially, I'm not a very trusting person in relationships for obvious reasons. Um, and she wasn't trusting of men, not necessarily relationships, but she had been in relationships with men, so it kind of crossed over. Um, but for me, it was like, women can't be trusted, especially when they're 16 hours away. Definitely don't trust that. And so we had to build trust over the phone. And, you know, I've always depended on my spidey sense. It's not always 100% accurate, but it really does keep me from, being hurt to where now I feel like I want to hurt somebody because I'm hurt. Hurt people hurt people. So, yeah, our origin story was unique, but also it really did sort of encompass two people who are individually minded, who like to do things to say that they did it. And we're not successful at everything, but we're pretty successful at our relationship. And I think it's because we're willing to fight. She's willing to stand on her square. I'm willing to stand on my square, and you know, we'll go weeks.
That's not
It is true. We'll go weeks without being 100% happy with this person, But by the same token, there's a trust there. There's a process. When we're in that process, that you can see that there's a process. Like if I'm in like a really big argument or situation with her, um, I tend to want to fast. I tend to want to meditate. I tend to want to find my part in that. Like I will dissect my part in a situation, only because I'm eliminating me so I can blame you. So, in the process of eliminating myself, you're not clean. You're never going to be clean in a two-party relationship and thinking that only that other party is doing dirt. You're not clean. And I've learned a long time ago, especially from the masculine perspective, it's better to assume you're wrong first and then let the evidence play out to your innocence than to gravitate toward this innocence when, to be honest, most of the time, I'm really one of the people that believe when you're in a relationship that the man is probably wrong 9 out of 10 times. Like real talk, you can see where had you done something in this moment, but because you knew what was coming in that moment, you chose to avoid it, that when it blows up and festers and becomes something bigger, and you know in that moment, had Daryl handled that problem there, this would have never have happened.
I love that.
But we go through that,
But that's for any leadership and that's for self-leadership as well. Like if you, as soon as you leave that gap that nothing that I can do can affect the situation because it's somebody else's fault, you're literally becoming the victim. All right. So it's never the look, right? For a man who likes the appearance of leadership and alpha male and masculinity to be in the victimhood around what's happening around him. And that's also true for any leadership. Like you don't if you're blaming other people for the thing, then you're not seeing how you can set things up in a way that will create a better result. So so for me, that was a matter of just personality. I can't say that I had the best integrity in that way of saying that like I was purposefully looking for my own faults. No, I just always was thinking that I was at fault, right? So it was always a self-evaluation in that way. It wasn't for like a more leadership-minded result. There is that. But yeah, so that's the kind of where we want to start going with these conversations is what are the different perspectives that allow us to self-lead in a relationship that we live together, right?
that's
Um,
important. I don't think enough couples try and be their own leadership within
it's
the
if you're
relationship.
not doing it, then the relationship isn't working. That's just the truth. If you're not improving as an individual, then the relationship can't grow and it won't. It'll either grow or it'll die, like most things in nature.
That's kind of the thing about relationships. People talk about, well, we grew apart. Yeah, you do grow apart, but you grow back together.
Yeah.
And there are moments in our relationship where we've grown apart, where, you know, there's something about, you know, being a man and maturing into my 50s that, you know, and you're not where you want to be in life, that you have to take a real honest look. And and in that look, you might grow apart. You might have the same, let's just use an example of sexual attraction, not attraction, but like just the, and guys understand this animalistic sexual attraction that people have, it can, it doesn't, it matures into something else. It matures into, um, you know, feeling really happy when a person accomplishes something. That feeling of unbridled, like, like passion becomes an unbridled passion for someone else's accomplishments, like seeing them do good shit, like seeing them perform, seeing them, run a sales team. You begin to feel like, okay, we grew apart in that way, but we grew together in this way, which makes our bond stronger. If I was still had the same feelings that I had for her when I first met her, I think there would be something wrong with that. It should have matured. It should have grown into something different. It can't stay in the root area and produce fruit. It has to continue to go and grow and become something different, which is what a seed becomes. A seed becomes the fruit. So you have to really examine a lot of things in a relationship that say, okay, is it the same way? Is it growing and flourishing to become something different, to be the fruit it's supposed to be, or did it just die on the vine as sexual attraction?
Mm. Well, and I think I don't know, like I feel like sexual attraction is part of being a natural, like a natural part of being a healthy human. So it's really about, in a mature relationship, it's really about where are you putting your focus and attention, and are you receiving, are you really appreciating, are you appreciating what you're seeing, right? Like it's easy to say, oh, I saw that before. I've seen that for 18 years. I'm done. You know what I'm saying? Like it's easy to be like, oh yeah, dismiss the beauty and something that you it's just part of your environment, right? Can become just that, and then so therefore you're not respecting, you're not valuing anything you don't value will decline. Like it will no longer be part of what's growing in your life, right? So it's about what are you appreciating, and if you can't appreciate your partner succeeding, your partner winning, your partner doing cool things, right? You can't appreciate that, then you're not seeing the beauty, and therefore, yeah, you're gonna lose that desire.
I think
Um,
a lot of relationships fail in that way.
yeah, because they're so easy to stick with in the criticism, because there's also like part of being the other person's person is that you see everything that they could do or they should do, and so if you're in the wrong mindset, right, that would make them better, that would make life better. It's really easy to see the flaws in somebody else,
Which is why self-evaluation
and
is
this is why you have
massive.
to turn that lens back in. For sure, for sure. So yeah, so parts of what we're going to be talking about our next episode. Let me go look at what our next episode is, so you can come hang out with us. It'll be healing generational silence. So we're really going to get into ancestral kind of stories, lineages, how we can talk about our story, our ancestral story, our family story, our career story, even to be able to bring attention, awareness to the work that wants to be done, right? How we can make an impact when we're talking about what's real for us and how we can help people. And so that's a combination of what we're going to be doing. Practically speaking, we're going to be helping you understand the value that you bring to the world. And then we're going to also be helping you talk about it with others, right? So a lot of what we bring is our relationship
Well,
strengths
the internal
and our,
conversation has to happen first.
yeah, yes. So is that our ability to connect in relationship to even get things done. We're not in agreement all the time.
Partly.
And also in bringing about the vision. And so and usually Daryl is the one with the more complete vision. I just have an idea where I want something to go, and then I'm just like following the impulse, following the impulse. Daryl has like a full picture, and I'm just like, yeah, right now this is where we are, right? So it's about
It's a full picture,
how
but
we
it's
bring,
kaleidoscoped.
yeah, how we bringing that vision into life in the now moment with our now circumstances, right? And so, yeah, I think we're going to have fun talking about how that happens on both sides of the trail.
Challenging.
Daryl has led several teams into success, several $1 million for several different companies, and created millionaires while he was building salespeople. So they went on to build their own businesses and to do really well in the business world just by what they learned about themselves in his training. So it wasn't just about selling the product, it was about selling them on themselves and understanding what it would mean to step up into the bigger version of themselves to achieve the dreams that they were looking to achieve. So we're going to get a lot from that. And then me and my voice method, it's all about the inner game for me. I have to start inside in order for me to show up in the way that I want to show up, right? So that's what I teach and train. I have a method that I'm currently doing and at home beta study to see if we can get some scientific data to show you why it works so well for people who are presenting and performing and want to do it with impact and magnetically, kind of bringing people to you instead of you chasing people. So we got a nice little combo happening here.
Right. In the first episode, one of the other names we were talking about was origin alchemy. And the reason alchemy is such an amazing word that we clearly don't use is you have to alchemize every part of your life. Every part of your life has to go through changes because you're changing. You're changing all the time. You're changing the way you think about things. You're changing the way you respond to things. Those are things, chemical processes that are happening in your body, and that's alchemy. And so when you can consciously do those things, you're going to get a more refined result. And that's what you get in your relationship. When things become more conscious to you, then you can have a more refined result in the process of the chemical alterations that go on in your body, because they're happening either way. You're having these chemical changes happen all the time, but if you're not conscious of them, especially in a relationship, if you start a relationship that's 19 years in and you're still having an issue with jealousy, that's a you. You haven't alchemized those feelings. You haven't allowed trust for another person's integrity. And when you start talking like that, then the first victim of lack of trust, lack of integrity is happening inside, which is why your experience is what you're experiencing with your partner. So if you're having trust issues, it's not what your partner's doing. It's just that process in you hasn't had the alchemical change to be something else and to reflect as something else in you, especially when integrity and trust exist.
That's right. That's right. So that's what we have coming up. So this is your portal for creating and alchemizing yourself to be able to speak magnetically and lead with vision and master doing both.
And for the people who resonate with leadership and sales, your presence is your product. You are your greatest product. You are the product that evolves, that continues to be of value to the people in your life, whether you're doing it from an active sales position or you're the salt of the earth mommy who's dealing with her kids on a daily basis. Whoever you are and in every position, your presence is the product.
That's right. So much love to you all. And we will see you next week. We will be seeing you on Mondays officially. So you'll probably get a little preview of the drop on Sunday evening. And then if you're looking for it, it'll be up and ready for you Monday morning.
And also, drop in some questions if you have some questions about your relationship, about us, and you want to have some more answers to that. Drop some questions in, and we'll try and get to those. And at some point, we're going to have this as a live. We start gathering a little more folks who want to see it more regularly. But yeah, if you have some questions about our relationship, about the things we overcome in this relationship, drop some questions.
Yes, please do. We want to hear from you. We want to focus on the things that you're interested in as well. We have a plan, but if we can serve you, that will be even better. We might even drop some little things as we get the questions in or want to know more about this piece. Then I think maybe little shorts we can make together. Yeah. So that would be fun if you want to come play. All right, everybody. We'll see you next week on Diva and Unk.